Hello, fellow orchestral music sequencing nerds. My name's Casey, and it's been forever since I've done a video. It's been about 5 years, I think, and I wanted to take this chance to share one quick, easy trick that I've discovered for a music orchestral sample library that I love, which is the Vienna Instruments and Vienna Ensemble. And specifically the winds. I really love the winds of this library. Their legato transitions, I think, are still unsurpassed as far as any orchestral library goes. And I think it's because they recorded it so dry, without a lot of room reverb, which you can add afterwards. And that makes it possible to just have perfect legato transitions from note to note, or at least as good as I've ever heard. So, as you just heard, that flute to me sounds pretty believable, sounds pretty nice. And of course, depending on how well you control it, you can make it even more real. And what I wanted to share with you today was something that I've discovered to make this instrument even more flexible and versatile and easy to use. And it has to do with expression. So you see here I've got Digital Performer open, and that is the sexiest of the DAWs, I believe, by world consensus. I'm joking, but who cares? If you're in it for the sex, yeah, why are you in front of a computer? But anyway, so here is the Vienna Instruments window, and it's here inside of Vienna Ensemble Pro. I'm using the standard composer's setup of running my instruments on a separate slave computer, which is tethered to me by an Ethernet chain. And so here I've got 3 different cells for the flute. First is staccato, which doesn't respond to the mod wheel at all. Here is the legato, which of course does respond to the mod wheel. And this patch we'll talk about in a little bit. So most of the time people have expression mapped to CC11. And CC11 is fine if you've got a fader on your keyboard that you have assigned to CC11, you can push it up and down. But unfortunately, the problem with doing it that way is that CC11 is almost always set at the top of the dynamic range. It's set to 127 as a default. So if something is too loud, you can bring it down, you can quiet it. But let's say you want to push something and make it a little bit louder. In that case, you're out of luck. You got to go find another place in your signal path where you can push that up. So what I do instead is I map the CC11 or the expression to the pitch bend wheel, which when you think about it, the pitch bend wheel is readily accessible on pretty much every single MIDI keyboard. And it's going completely unused for any kind of orchestral music, unless you're getting weird with it and literally pitch bending some sort of swoops or dips or doits for your flute. But most often, you're not going to do that. So you've got this great controller that's unused. So if you map expression to the pitch wheel, what that does is, first of all, when the pitch wheel is in the center, expression is halfway. So you're not going to get the full expression as a default with this option. But I think that's fine because it just gives you basically headroom to play with, and you can always amplify things later in the signal chain. So let's say I'm using that flute. I can just pull the pitch bend wheel down and pull that all the way down to 0. And similarly, if I want to boost it a little bit without switching dynamic layers, you've got a lot of space to give it a little extra boost. And the most, I think, useful part about this setup is that it always snaps back to the center position, right? So the thing about expression is a lot of times you make some kind of move in the expression and then you forget about it, and all of a sudden your instrument is too loud or too quiet, and you're like, why? Oh, it's because my expression was dialed in a certain way. And expression should be used as just that, as expression. It shouldn't be used as a mixing tool. It should be used as an expressive tool in the instrument. So with that in mind, putting it on pitch bend, I think, makes a lot of sense. And the controller, I think, is very well suited to that because it's got a little bit of pressure. It resists moving from that center position, and it always comes back to zero, which I think is great. So, and this is especially, I think, useful for instruments where the velocity layer transitions aren't quite as smooth. So, for example, let's say clarinet. So Vienna did their best, but they still can't really represent the dynamic expressive potential of a clarinet that well using velocity layers. And if we look at the clarinet instrument patch, the legato patch only has 3 velocity layers, whereas in reality, the instrument is steadily changing its spectral profile the louder it gets. So the result is you get these audible jumps in the sound. So instead, let's say you're here, let's say you want that quiet, soft, round clarinet sound. Actually, much more subtle to use the pitch bend and just give those notes a little bit of shape as opposed to. It can get a little bit messy. So this is a great way to work within the limits of what the sample library offers. Okay, and the other quick tip that I wanted to share has to do with this last cell in my matrix, in which I have a sforzato and a sustain both in the same patch. So the sforzato is just one velocity layer, and it gives you that sharp attack and then a very quiet, short sustain afterwards. But let's say, what if you want a sharp attack on a sustain note? A lot of libraries are actually really bad at this, and it's something that should be very common. I mean, a lot of times you want to go ba, and you want it to be sharp but also strong. So sforzato here, not controlled by mod wheel, controlled only by velocity. Sustain here, not controlled by the velocity, only controlled by mod wheel. So if I want only that sforzato going to a very quiet sound, I can do that by playing loud and having the mod wheel down. But if I want a strong attack and a strong sustain, I just pull up the velocity layer that controls the sustain. Pretty good. And similarly, if I don't want that sharp attack and I just want that clarinet sustain, all I gotta do is play with a low velocity. So in that one cell, now you have basically taken care of a lot of different expressive possibilities and things that you might, colors that you might want to use in your composition. So yeah, there it is. Pitch bend is a great thing to map to the expression of a patch, and overlaying sforzato and sustain is a great way in one cell to get a lot of expressive potential. So that's all I got for you for today, and I hope to be making more videos soon about different aspects of working better that I've discovered. So until then, let me know what you think, and I'd be interested to know if anybody has similar approaches for other libraries, especially ones used in Kontakt, because changing all the mappings in Kontakt is a little more hairy and ugly than doing it in Vienna Instruments. So if anybody has had experience remapping expression in Kontakt, I would love to hear about it and not have to take the time to figure it out myself. So that's all, and take care. See you next time.